lies, damn lies, and marketing. So I'm going to share a few things about the book. Everything that I'm going to share is in the book in some shape or form. So I was very happy. The book was launched only on August 31st, so it's just been a little over, not even 2 months yet. And in the very first week, this book was selected as one of 8 books by Inc. magazine that will help you sharpen your strategic thinking. And what I was really pleased about was that I'm the only first-time author. Everybody else is a 3 times, 4 times New York bestseller. So I was quite honored. Talk about the imposter syndrome. That's what I'm having right now. So with that, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just to get rolling here. How many of you have actually had bad experience with marketing?
Like that.
Yeah, I was fearful of that. How many of you don't understand really well what marketing does for you? After your bad experience, you probably wonder, right, what it does to you. And then maybe if you've had bad experiences for a while, you may be even ready to give up on it, because to heck with it. Why throw money away when you don't know what you're getting for it? So I'm going to try and help answer these questions for you. Okay, that's the reason why the book is called Lies, Damn Lies, and Marketing, because a lot of stuff that gets peddled as marketing are lies. Cannot be delivered. So that's why you'll probably be disappointed. So I'm going to show you what those lies are. So the reason I say that you should not be ready to give up on marketing is this particular survey. I mean, it's going to be sharing with you my experience, and of course, I've been in marketing for 35 years. Of course, I'm going to say good things about marketing. But you don't have to believe me. There's a company called CB Insights. It's a New York-based company that does research on startups. And when I say startups, not your kind of startups, but startups that have been funded by VCs. So it's startups that are well past the startup stage. You know, they are not being incubated. They've actually raised money, and now they're actually got business to run. So when they do an analysis every year, and they do this every year, they look at all the funded businesses. So it excludes businesses that fail to raise money. If you got funded, that means you're a viable business funded by VCs or even had an IPO, and you failed in the previous 12 months. They go back and say, why did the company fail? With so much fanfare, so much money, so much advice, so much, the big brain power from Silicon Valley helping them. Why did they fail? Why did this particular company fail? So typically they analyze about 100 odd companies every year, because the average failure rate for those size of companies. So if you look at the top 10 reasons, these are the top 10 reasons. Every year it happens. This happens to be from last year. If you notice, so these are the top, and then of course they add up to more than 100, because sometimes or often businesses fail for more than one reason. So the most common reason is that there was no market need. You come up with a great idea, you start a new company, you get funded, you fool the investors, but there is no market need. So that's the top reason. But then you run out of these things, you run out of cash, you have some team issues, conflicts happen, blah, blah, blah. But if you notice, 8 out of the 10 reasons for failure actually belong in marketing. So if you say that, I'm done with marketing has fooled me all this time, I've wasted so much money in marketing, I'm not going to rely on marketing. I'll rely on sales, I'll rely on engineering, I'll rely on HR, but not marketing. You're taking a risk, because the reason businesses have failed is because they did not do good marketing. At least 8 of those issues, 8 of those reasons could have been handled if they had done better marketing or more marketing or marketing at all. So this is a slide to show you that even if you're being frustrated by marketing, don't give up on it. In fact, I'm glad that you are here to learn what's good marketing and what is bad marketing. Okay, and by the way, stop me anytime, both on Zoom or here. Stop me anytime if you have a question. I'll obviously take questions at the end, but if you have a burning question, please stop anytime. So my goal here is that I want you to understand what's possible and also what's not possible with marketing. Because I know from personal experience, many marketers like to overpromise. They like to overpromise, and that's one of the reasons why you have been frustrated, because they promised you something that there was no way they could have delivered, but they promised it to you, and therefore you feel frustrated. I'll also show you what kind of questions you should be asking so that you don't get fooled. So the next time you have a marketing person or a marketing company or a marketing agency trying to tell you that they can do marketing for you and it all looks good, but when you're working with them, ask them some better questions so that you know how to judge whether they are overpromising, whether they can actually deliver what they say they plan to deliver. And again, obviously you get benefit from it, and I'm going to show you what kind of benefits you do get from marketing. So one of the things that I discovered, by the way, let me tell you a little background as to how did I decide to write this book. So I had a long corporate career with companies like Toyota, Cummins, Honeywell, Kodak. And then I came to Reno for 6 to 9 months, and then fell in love with Lake Tahoe and decided that I was not going to move back to New Jersey with my corporate job. I was going to leave my corporate life and settle down here. That was 16 years ago, so I've been here 16 years. So if I were to settle down here, I had to do something. There weren't any Teslas or Googles or Apples over here at that time. So I decided I'll do consulting. So I then joined a company called Chief Outsider, so I've got clients all over the world actually, but mostly in the US. So one of the things I discovered while I've been consulting is that any CEO I talk to, with very few exceptions, with almost no exceptions, I would say that they had an incomplete view of what marketing is. Not necessarily incorrect, but an incomplete view. And most of them thought marketing is website, brochure, ad, social media. That was their extent of what marketing is. That's how they saw marketing. And which is, I wouldn't say that that's wrong, but it is definitely incomplete by a long measure. So I have in the book, I have this chart, which is really, you must have heard of the Indian parable, which talks about 5 blind men describing the elephant, and they all describe the elephant differently, which is how I experienced what marketing was in the eyes of the CEOs. They all described it, but they all described it incompletely. It was not a good view or complete view of what they were dealing with. So I'm going to share a little bit of what I believe or the comprehensive marketing is. So just to make it easy, I'm dividing it up into what I call big M marketing and small m or little m marketing. So the big M marketing is strategic, and it includes things like the why question, the insights about the company, insights about the customers, insights about the competition. Get a good feel for all of that. It includes strategy, which means what segments you should go after, what kind of products you should have, what's the balance between product features and cost and price, positioning, differentiation, pricing, messaging. Now, if you are customers, which all of us are customers, right? All of us buy something. If you notice, we rarely, if ever, address these questions as a customer. We don't care. We don't ever ask the question, what is the segmentation? Who are they going after? What are they doing? So the visible part of marketing, that's visible to customers is actually the small M marketing. And most of the money that companies spend is spent on small M marketing, and which, by the way, is how it should be. So I'm not suggesting that more money should be spent on big M marketing. All I'm suggesting is that big M marketing is important, and it's the invisible part of marketing. So why is big M marketing important? The big M marketing is important because I'm sure you've heard this, and I know Erica has heard this, we just came in, that there's a very famous saying in the marketing world that I know half of my marketing dollars are wasted. The only problem is I don't know which half. So I end up spending the full dollar. So what I'm going to suggest to you is that if you do big M first, you will get a better ROI on your small M. So again, the key point is that small M is very important. Small M is where most of your money should go. But before you jump into small M, make sure that you are spending some time and some money, usually about 10% of your overall budget, in doing the big M stuff. Because it's going to get you a better return on the other 90 cents that you're going to spend. Any questions on this? Because this is a pretty crucial point here. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the lies and damn lies, and just to make it easy, I've divided them up into big M stuff, the big M lies, and the small M lies. And the ones which overlap, I'll talk about them at the very end. So the big M lies. So generally speaking, especially in B2B world, we have a lot of respect for our customers. And we should. We should always respect our customers. But that does not mean that we should say that my customers are rational. They are engineers, they are PhDs, they went to UNR, they're highly educated, therefore they must be rational. In fact, I would even suggest that even you guys are not rational. I'm not rational. If you don't believe me, just hang in there, because I'll prove to you that most of us are not rational. So there's a famous professor at University of Southern California. He made this point that we are actually emotional beings. Or he said we are not thinking machines that feel, we are actually feeling machines that think. So in other words, most of our time, we are feeling things, intuiting things. And then those of us who are better at Excel spreadsheet, will create a spreadsheet to justify our feeling. I've done that. Earlier on in my life, when I was choosing my car, I knew which car I wanted, but I created a spreadsheet just to feel good about it. So keep that in mind. Not saying you should throw the data out, but you need data, but you also need to lace it with emotions so that they can be more accepted. In my business career, I see this very often. My clients will say, well, we gave them all the data we had, and the customer is still not buying. So they're still trying to sell. Then they say, okay, well, let's dig up some more data. Let's throw more data their way. So if you give them 10 reasons, now you give them 15 reasons why you're superior. They still don't buy. So the reason is not that they have less data than they need. The reason is that whether they admit or not, somewhere along the line, the emotional hang-up is there, and you need to overcome the emotional hang-up. So let's run this experiment. If any of you are believing or not believing that we are, some of us are more rational. So I'm going to do, since we are here, I'm going to do a little gambling kind of survey. So I'm going to flip a coin, and you get to choose. We have about about 7 of us here. 8. So first round, I'm going to do this a couple of times. In the first one, I'm going to give you a choice that you can choose either option A or option B. If you choose option A, you will get $5,000. No question asked, regardless of what I flip on the coin. If you choose option B, if I get a heads, you'll get 10,000. If I get tails, you get nothing. So choose either option A or option B. Option A, 5,000 for sure. Option B could get you 10,000 or could get you nothing. So how many of you would choose option A? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 on 7 here.
Let's roll.
Yeah, so I'm down 35,000 already. So much for the presentation here. Okay. That's actually a pretty strong case for option A. Usually I get 80% who choose option A and somebody will hold out for the 10,000 bucks. Let's change the game a little bit, okay? So forget this game. My second game is, same, you choose between option A and option B. In option A, you will walk out, leave 5,000 bucks here. regardless of what I pull, you're going to give me 5,000 bucks. That's option A. Option B is you could lose 10,000 bucks, or I'll let you go scot-free. So here, are you going to choose option A or option B? A, you're leaving 5,000 bucks for sure. Option B, there's a 50% chance that you'll walk away with no loss, or you'll end up losing 10,000 bucks. 50-50. It's a flip of a coin. So which one are you choosing? Option A or option B? Option A. People for option A. One. She wants to give me 5,000 bucks. Option B. Most of you. Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty much what I normally get. If you think about it, in both of these games, both option A and option B are mathematically the same. In other words, the expected value, what's known as the expected value of outcome, is the same. It's 5,000. Either you win 5,000 or the second one you lose 5,000. Expected value is the same because it's 100 times 100% of 5,000 or 50% of 10,000 and 50% of 0. So expected values are the same. But when it came to gaining, you wanted to have the sure thing. When it came to losing, you wanted to hold out for the hope that you might not have to pay anything. 10,000 versus 0. So that tells you that if it was purely a rational decision, you would have stayed with the same decision, A or B, because they are mathematically the same. But because you're not rational beings, we are not rational beings, we let emotions come in. What we're doing is we're trying to avoid a loss. When we're choosing option B, the second one, we're really desperately trying to avoid a loss. That 50% chance that I'll walk away with 0 is what's getting us to choose option B. Not the case in option or in the first one. So that tells you, and there's so many other experiments I can share with you, which will show that none of us is as rational as you would like to believe, and that's true for your customers as well. Switching gears, one of the things I do is I also teach marketing courses. I used to teach at Sierra Nevada University up there. I think that's where I met Erica. And now I teach at College International Business School in Dubai and in San Francisco. So I've been teaching now for about 13 years. And very often, almost in every course I teach, somebody or the other will say, you know what, why are we wasting time talking about all the other things in marketing? Why don't we just cut to the chase and go to digital? Because everything is digital now, isn't it? And the truth is, it's not. My claim here is that digital is just a channel for you. In other words, instead of printing things, instead of putting up things on billboard, which by the way we still do, we still print, we still go to trade shows. But think of digital as just another channel. So what you need to say, how often you need to say it, what should the picture be, what should the soundbite be, what should the text be, those questions still need to be answered, even if you're using digital as a channel. So think of it as another channel. Keep in mind that digital 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when it first became popular, it was almost a freebie. Why? Because very few people were doing digital. Today, everybody's doing digital, which means there's noise. I mean, how many Google ads do you really click on? Or do you even notice? Very few. How many Facebook ads do you even notice? Any digital ad do you really notice? There's so much noise. So what you have to do, if you want to be effective in marketing, you have to balance it between digital and analog, or digital and traditional. And in some instances, analog or the traditional channel will give you an edge. Why? Because everybody has gone towards digital. You have sort of, I wouldn't say open ground and traditional, but a lot less cluttered ground on the traditional side. So again, I'm not arguing against digital. I'm simply arguing for putting double down money on only digital. So that's what you need to understand. How do you decide which one do you choose, or how much of digital and how much of analog or traditional? I've got a simple formula for that. And the simple formula is that you need to really understand your buyer's journey. What do your buyers do when they're making decisions in their purchasing decision? And this applies to both B2C and B2B as well. So I like to present this as a loop. So the first step that happens in a buyer's journey is awareness. Awareness of two things. One, awareness that I have a need, I have a problem that I need to solve, and awareness of possible solutions. If I'm in the market for an SUV, I should know that I'm in the market for SUV, and then I want to answer the question as to what are my choices in the SUV arena. I should get to consideration. I'm going to start looking at what are my choices. I'll get to evaluation, pros and cons, price, features, benefits, looks, all those things. I'll start evaluating. Then I make a decision. Then I go and purchase, and now I'm very happy and start driving that. So I start adopting it. So if I bought it because I wanted to haul the kids to the soccer games and all that, so I start getting some kind of, I get into a certain routine. I figure out how it's going to be run. And usually, other than the initial thrill at the point of purchasing a new vehicle, the real value, if you ever get real value out of a purchase, happens a few days, a few months later, once it has sort of settled into your own lifestyle. So that's when you start realizing what the value is. And if that does happen, in other words, you do recognize that there's a positive value, you get to loyalty. That's when you say, I'm always going to buy a Toyota or that particular model. And the next step is actually a crucial one, which most of us don't even think of, and that is advocacy. And what it means is that if you have a satisfied customer, that customer can be one of your better advocates, better than your dealer's sales guy. So you have to sort of close the loop. Now, it's not just, I'm calling it a closed loop here because the advocacy means that 5 years from now, when they're in the market, if they're very happy with it, Toyota is what they're getting, or at least it's Toyota's to lose, because that's their default. I was very happy with my Toyota minivan, I'm going to get a Toyota SUV, and I'm going to get another Toyota SUV. But more than that, during that ownership, they're going to always talk about it. If they're thrilled with it, they're always going to mention it at parties. They're always going to mention it. If somebody says, I'm in the market for a car, they'll say, yeah, I'll be very happy with my Toyota. So those are your best salespeople. They're your customer advocates. So that's what you need to look at. So again, I introduce this in the context of digital versus traditional. So what you need to do is, if this is the loop, what you need to figure out is, at each of these junctions, each of these 8 links, are your customers, are Toyota customers spending more time on the digital side or on the analog side, or both? And that will help you decide what you need to give them at what stage. Okay, I'll give you another example. If you drive down Route 101 between San Francisco and San Jose, it's about 50 odd miles, and it takes about 3 hours on a good day. There are probably about a dozen or maybe even 20 huge billboards of Apple. Usually they use it for iPhones, and it says shot on iPhone. They have customer photographs, very fancy, beautiful photographs that are truly shot by customers using Apple products. So why is Apple, which is such a digital company, such a smart company, why are they spending millions of dollars every year on traditional media like billboards? The simple reason is because they know of the traffic on Route 101. They know a lot of people are spending a lot of time. And the best part about this, the way I interpret this, is that those billboards are actually addressing both iPhone users and Android users. Because if I'm an iPhone user, I want to feel good. I want to sort of say, oh, I can take a photograph like that. Wow, I didn't know that. So they're building loyalty to existing customers. And to the Android guys, they're saying, hey, you can take better pictures with our phone. So again, the point here is that traditional media is not dead. Okay. Switching gears again. By the way, these are all different chapters in the book. So I'm sort of flipping through it almost like the book over here. So if you have been a CEO, if you run a business, or if you have actually reported to a CEO, you know that every CEO wants to go fast. They want this thing done yesterday. Okay, they're all type A people. The problem is that you have heard the story of the tortoise and the hare. The problem is that, yes, everybody wants speed, but in the book I call the chapters, but speed kills. And what I mean by that is speed alone kills. So if any of you remember your physics, if you studied physics in your past life, there was a difference between speed and velocity. So speed was simply how fast you were going. Velocity in physics was how fast you're going, but also it has a direction component. In which direction were you going? So what I tell CEOs is that you want fast, don't think speed, think velocity. In other words, you also, before you answer the question how fast you want, answer the question, in which direction do I want to go? Why? Because my perspective is that going fast in the wrong direction is more costly than going slow in the right direction, which was why the graphic of the hare. He's going in all kinds of directions, going fast, but wasting his energy, wasting his time. And the tortoise, who was sort of very slow, but very clear-headed as to what direction she wanted to go in, won the race. So you have to think strategically. This again sort of goes back to the big M stuff. Spend time deciding on big M so that you can go fast on small M. I have another story on this, and one of the things that I've discovered, and you may have discovered this too, that when people struggle with growth, they're not achieving certain goals, we usually have a tendency to add more of something. So even if you're cooking something, and if you say, it doesn't taste very good, on cooking it applies because what can you do? You can only add some, you cannot take stuff out from your saucepan. But in the business world, you can, right? So we tend to end up spending more time in adding more and more of whatever we're trying to do. So I'm going to talk about market research. So we say, well, let's talk to 50 customers. Well, we didn't like the answer. Well, then let's talk to 200 customers. Maybe you like the answer. But in some instances, for small businesses or for B2B businesses, you don't have 200 customers. Your whole business is based on 50 accounts. So how do you reach 200 customers when your whole business, your universe is only 50 accounts? Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't need quantity. What you need is quality of research. And by that, you don't have to even worry about the statistical validity. And I'm actually going to share a story that is in the book. So a few years ago, maybe many years ago, Procter & Gamble was launching Febreze. You're familiar with Febreze, right? So they said, well, Febreze we invented this product, it's fantastic, it kills all the odors, and we're going to target households which have odor issues. Cats, dogs, kids, whatever, leaky toilets, or gas-emitting individuals. The only problem was when they launched it and positioned it that way, that it sort of takes care of your odor issues. Originally, they sold a few, but then the sales started dropping within the first couple of months. Not something that Procter & Gamble ever wanted or expected. So then they went out and started surveying people. And of course, Procter & Gamble has 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 customers they can survey. So there's no shortage of quantity over there. If they wanted to survey 100,000 people, easy, they can do it. And they have money too. But what they found was that as they were surveying, they were not getting the answer as to why aren't people buying Febreze when it's so good a product, when they themselves tell you that it's a good product. Then they sort of rejiggered their market research plan, and they said, instead of doing the survey, we're actually going to go out in the field and visit some households. Of course, you cannot visit 100,000 households, you're going to visit maybe a dozen, maybe 2 dozen. So they flew out to different parts of the country, a team of 2 or 3 people started visiting. And they found that most customers believe that they don't have an order problem. I'm sure you can relate to this, that you go to somebody's house and you're sort of saying, and everybody else who lives in the house, they're very comfortable. And even if you sort of raise this point gently, they say, oh, no, we don't have any, I have 9 cats, but our cats don't smell. And you say, oh, yeah, right. Your cats smell like anybody else's cats. So positioning it as this solves your order issues was a bad positioning. Why? Because most people believe order issues. One customer of theirs who was very happy and continuing to buy Fibries all along, she said, no, I don't have order issues, but I think of this as a cherry on top of my cleaning routine. So I vacuum, everything is fine, but just because I want to sort of feel good that I've finished my vacuum, I just go few sprays and that's the end. Whether I need it or not, it just makes me feel good. So when they changed the position to that, that's when the sales picked up. So the reason I share the story is that that revelation or that insight did not and could not have come from 100,000 surveys. It could have only come in visiting and spending time with a customer. So if you are in small business, if you don't have the money or you don't have enough customers to survey and create a statistically valid survey, don't worry about it. Have richer conversations. Have richer conversations with a few handful of customers. Okay, all right. Let's switch to small M. So everybody loves social media for marketing, but I tell you, it's not a silver bullet. It is definitely not a silver bullet today. Why? Because everybody and their mother-in-law are all on social media. And it's no longer free. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you got a big boost if you went into social media because you were unique, you were viewed as a cutting-edge person. But today, social media is cluttered, it's crowded, and it's expensive. So again, I'm not arguing against social media, I'm simply saying don't view it as a silver bullet. So again, you have to go back to that customer loop, understand your buyer's journey, and understand which social media channel delivers what to which customer of yours. For many of your businesses, you may find that Instagram is the best. For many others, Instagram is horrible. Nobody's spending time on Instagram. So you have to choose which one you want and which one you should use and then go after that. But don't just say, I'm going to do social media marketing and that will solve all my marketing issues. This particular quote actually comes from a friend of mine. For various reasons, partly because I just forgot, I did not use it in the book, but I use it in my presentation. So he loves to say that a fool with a tool is still a fool. And the point here is that, imagine this, if you wanted to sort of look over this wall and somebody said, get a ladder, gets a ladder and steps on it, as shown in the picture, it doesn't work. He goes and buys 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 more, still doesn't work. The point here is, just because you got the right tool, but if you don't know how to use it, you'll end up doing this. You'll spend more money on the tools, and it will not do the job for you. But that was a ladder and Home Depot kind of an example, but what happens in the marketing world? No, I'm not going to apologize for this slide, that it's an eye chart. It is meant to be an eye chart. And what I'm showing you here is all the marketing tools that were available a year ago. There are 8,000 of them. How in the world can anybody choose from this? Okay, and by the way, this thing has been growing. So it's 8,000 now, and the year before there were only 5,000. Next year there'll probably be 11,000. So the problem is getting worse. It's not getting any better. So my usual answer is that if you don't have a tool, then yeah, you do need to get something. But don't waste time and money getting the latest shiny object. Okay, you will probably get a higher return on your tool investment if you invested a little more money besides what you paid for getting the tool on learning how to use it. There's no point getting a hammer or there's no point getting a saw if you don't know how to use it. So I'm always suggesting, yes, you do need tools, I'm not asking you to go back to Post-its and number 2 pencil, but don't be enamored by the shiny object because somebody else comes up with this. Because they're going to come up with 3,000 more tools this year. So there will be more shiny objects. You need to stay away from all that so that you can invest time and money in training. This is where it gets interesting. There's something called random acts of marketing. And we're going to test the UNR audio system here. I've got an example to show you. So, what are random acts of marketing? Random acts of marketing are, as the name suggests, acts of marketing done randomly, just like random acts of kindness. So, what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is that they can be ineffective, and they will, if you do random acts of marketing, you will leave money on the table. And I'll show you how. So here's where we get into a little experiment. So the best way for me to show you this was I thought I'd use an analogy. And the analogy I'm going to use is of music. Okay. So I've taken a music piece that you all recognize. And I've chosen this piece of music not because it's my favorite or I believe it's your favorite. I've chosen this music piece because this music piece was available as 5 separate files, free. And I'm a big believer of free. So I didn't want to pay for audio files from the Rolling Stones, but I found this freely available on the web. So I said, okay, let me use this. So there are 5 tracks that were recorded by the original artist or artists. And I'm going to so think of it this way. Each of these musicians is highly respected, beautifully recorded. And actually, that's what you will actually see if you bought their CD or listen to it on Spotify. But since I have them in 5 separate things, think of them as 5 separate marketing programs. One is your Facebook ads, the other one is trade shows, the other one is webinars that you conduct, and then you have brochures. Whatever your mix might be, think of those as 5 different things that you do as part of your marketing plan. And so what typically happens in the business world is you say, okay, I got the budget approved, so I'm going to turn the first plan on. Then I'm going to turn the second one on. And then you get to the meeting with the CEO and says, you know what, you've been spending money on marketing, I've not seen any results. So you sort of go slow on number 4, waiting for the something to kick in. It's not kicking in. Now you start getting nervous. I'm getting nervous too because I don't know if it's the sound. Then it kicks in. Oops. How do I go back? Okay, I'm not going to do it again, I guess. So I turn this on and I pause. Then as I start hearing something, then I have the confidence. Now I can go and tell the CEO, hey, it's working. So then I turn this on. And then maybe each musician, each track is as good as it can be. But just because they are sort of uncoordinated, it sounds horrible. That's where you're leaving money on the table. Whereas if I have one button that turns things on and okay, so what you have to sort of remember is you have to sort of think strategically, make the whole plan out, and then don't sort of say that I'm too busy executing and therefore I don't have to strategize. So don't sort of say, I thought of an idea, let me just go and implement it, because you are going to throw good money away if you do that. It's better to think for the whole year, what you're going to do, what you're not going to do, when you're going to do it, and then it will actually sound like as it's supposed to sound. Okay? And the last point is important. Keep a list of things you thought of, but decided not to do. But that's a good check that you don't end up doing random acts of marketing. Why? Because usually our tendency is if I can think it, let me do it if I have the money. But your thinking should be, what is it going to give me? Should I really do it? So basically you need a conductor to coordinate all your marketing programs. So then let's get to the big M and small, things that actually transcend these two categories. So just as an inside story, this idea of writing a book actually came from this. So this is the first idea I had. It happens to be chapter 14, but this is where the book idea came about. So we all have been schooled in believing that ROI is a good thing. And it is a good thing. But I'm going to show you how ROI can also lead us astray. When your CEO or your CFO or your investors say, show me the ROI for this, often you can, but many times you cannot. And generally the answer is, well, if I cannot show you the ROI, I should not do it. So I'm again going to give you the example of those billboards on Route 101. Do you think Tim Cook has any idea how many more iPhones have been sold because of those billboards? Is there any way for him to know that? No, he does not. If you have bought iPhones in your history, has anybody ever asked you, did you see this ad on Route 101? No. So they know that you cannot get an ROI for those billboards. Because you cannot answer the question, how many more iPhones I sold because of those billboards? So why is that? Because the buyer's journey is very complex. In fact, it's more complex today than it was 30 years ago or 40 years ago. 40 years ago, if you wanted to buy a weed whacker, you either went to a Sears store or you went to a Sears catalog. And if you went to one, you probably didn't go to the other. And you bought it at one, the Sears knew what sold, whether they sold it through the store or whether they sold it through the catalog. Today, when you buy a car or a phone, you go to the website, you go to this, you go to Facebook, you talk to. The buyer's journey has become a whole lot more complicated. And then there are customer advocates. In a weed whacker case, perhaps you only talk to your one neighbor, next door neighbor. That's it. And chances are your next door neighbor didn't have a weed whacker because if he did, you'd probably not buy one. You just borrow one. So basically, there was no customer advocates for whatever you were buying back then. Today, customer advocates are coming out of Bazoo. So the good and bad. So let me go a little further in this ROI thing. So I have got a little experiment here for you. So again, you'll have to answer some questions here. So let's say that you're in a business where your current revenue is $10 million. To 2021 revenue is $10 million. Your marketing person tells you that if you give me $1 million, I'll take that revenue from 10 million to 13 million. Make my marketing budget $1 million, and I promise you'll get a revenue of 13 next year. Will you do it? Will you approve this? Yeah, makes sense, right? Again, assuming that there's trust and, so.
I was about to say, it depends on if I trust him.
Yeah, so my assumption is if you don't trust him, then you should be firing him. But assuming that you trust him, so you say, okay, plus there's a little bit, okay, it's not 3, maybe 2.5, it's still maybe a 2. So yeah, so most people will say, yes, I'll do it. Let me show you whether it's a good idea or not. So is ROI 300%? You get $3 million, spending $1 million, 300%, right? Do it every single day. In fact, I might even tell my marketing guy, what if I give you $1.5 million? Can you give me $4.5 million in sales, more sales, same ratio? But wait a minute, that's revenue. If the margin is only 33%, if I spend $1 million, margin that I'll get, not revenue, margin that I'll get is only $1 million. So now is the ROI not 300, but is it 100%? Well, 100 is a lot less than 300, but heck, it still is 100. your spot is still saying, I'll do it, right? But wait a minute. Your incremental bank balance is only a zero. If you give $1 million to your marketing guy or gal, and she delivers $1 million more in the bank balance at the end of the year, you took out $1 million, you put the same $1 million back. I could have just let the $1 million sit there. So is the ROI zero? So just sitting over here in 5 minutes, same numbers, I showed you that your ROI is between 0 to 100 to 300. And that tells you the fallacy about ROIs. And I tell you what, I'll even admit that I've probably used this myself to sell some marketing plans to some CEOs. And that's one of the reasons why you get disappointed. Yeah, Erica?
But you still gain because you have more customers now.
Yeah. There are good reasons to do it because you're probably gaining some market share. But usually, this is how it's presented. 3 million, easy peasy, no brainer. But I'm sort of saying no brainer, but if you do a little bit of brain math, you might stumble a little bit. But yeah, there are other benefits of it. Sure, absolutely. Okay. Getting close to the end of this. Cracking the Google code. I've personally received lots of emails over my tenure as a marketing person from various SEO experts who would tell me that Google has changed their algorithm and maybe I should change how I word things and what words to use, change the website a little and all that. So they've promised that they'll help me crack the Google code. Let me tell you, Google code cannot be cracked. But there's even good news attached to that. And that is that you don't need to crack the Google code to win. And what I mean by that is that if you go to Google's website, and I've actually got a screenshot that I took just today because Google also is quick at changing. So this is a screenshot literally from 2 hours ago. And I've got the link over here. So if you go to this link here, developersgoogle.com, blah, blah, blah. Google tells you in plain English 4 things you need to do to rise in Google rankings. Okay? And there's simple stuff, common sense stuff. Make pages primarily for users, not for search engines. Don't try to please Google. Please your own customers. If you please your customers, Google will be happy and they'll reward you with higher ranking. So they said, don't focus on Google, focus on your customers, whatever customers they are, whether they are haircutting salon customers or whether they are jet aircraft engine customers. Focus on your customers. Don't deceive your users. How much more commonsensical can it get? Don't deceive, say the truth. Don't make claims that you cannot make. Avoid tricks intended to improve search engine rankings. So there's a warning you, don't use tricks. Think about what makes your website unique, valuable, or engaging. Not to Google, but to your customers. What makes it valuable? What makes it unique? What makes it engaging to your customers? If you do that, Google will reward you. And then the last point I want to make is that many marketing companies, they will sell you stuff. They'll sell you services because they have people in their back office waiting for that work. So in other words, if you hire a website development company and ask them to do your overall marketing, would it be a surprise to you that they're going to come back and say you need a new website? Because that's what they do. That's what they have 28 software developers waiting to do for you. So what happens is instead of doing service before self, they end up having self before service. So that's why I have this image of a selfish, implying that people get to be very selfish when it comes to promoting their marketing plans. Okay, so that was pretty much it. I think I lost my ability here. Yeah. So again, this is everything that I shared is in the book, and the book actually has 19 chapters. I think I shared only 7 of them. It is on sale today and tomorrow, 20% off on ebook as well as paperback. And these are some of the comments that I got from people who read the manuscript. And these are again real people, there are no fakes over here. As many of you probably know the first one, Chuck Alvey, he's a local Reno Vista chair. And then some of the other people who I've worked with. This company is in Rochester, New York, Connecticut, Michigan, Texas. So real people who have read the manuscript and then this is what they have to say. I'm going to, is there a way I can share this deck with the attendees?
Yes, we'll send it out after.
Yeah, so I'm going to not go through this. This is about Chief Outsiders. The only thing I want to point out is that we have actually gotten into the Inc. 5000 8 times in a row. And I'm told there are fewer than 100 companies who have gotten into the Inc. 5000 8 times in a row. So we are in a very exclusive club. Obviously, we have been growing rapidly. That's what gets us there. But our CEO is very proud of the next one. In 2019, we became the small giant. And the reason our CEO is more proud of it is because the small giant category is delivered only when they analyze the values of the company. It's not just about numbers. Inc. 5000 is all numbers. But small giant is also about how do you treat your employees? How do you treat your customers? And there are only obviously 25 companies recognized every year, and we were fortunate to be recognized a couple of years ago. Few things, we don't have any in-house research, advertising, SEO, web resources. Why? Because if I recommend that you need more SEO, it's not because I have an SEO expert sitting in my back office. It's because I truly believe that you need more SEO. So what we've done is we've sort of made sure that we don't have any back office people, so that we don't oversell what we have. A little bit about me, but you'll read it once you have the PDF. So any questions? I think we have another 5-6 minutes for questions. There must be some.
Yeah, Atul, this is Grace, and I think I'll ask the first question. So, marketing strategy really should be part of business strategy. And in fact, when I was in strategic marketing, the target really is the business goals. And there's a lot of what we call the upstream, which is really about customer segmentation, positioning, and be very strategic on where you want to go. Can you comment on how to make sure that the marketing team understand the business strategy of a company, and so that they can do the proper upstream, or what you call big M, before they focus on execution?
Yeah, thank you, Grace. That's actually a very, very good question. And I sort of glossed over this point as I reverted back to the slide here. The very first point that we make as a company is that we don't do marketing for the sake of marketing. We try to solve business problems with marketing. So I'm not interested in winning sort of a website, best website award. I'm interested in the website achieving its objectives. I'm interested in advertising achieving its business objectives. So good marketing always starts and ends with business objectives. And instead of asking what is your marketing goal, we never ask what is your marketing goal. We ask what is your business goal. And then we'll get to what marketing can and cannot do. And that's how I would suggest all of us should do marketing. Don't try to do marketing for the sake of marketing. Relate it to a business objective, and then let it trickle down to wherever it goes as to what you need to do and what you need to avoid. Grace, did that help with the question?
Yeah, thank you. And the second question is, we have people in our audience that are really in a startup company. Do you have any words of wisdom for startup companies? Obviously, the marketing needs is very different than the Fortune 500 companies.
It is very different, but I would argue that it's even more critical. A Fortune 500 company can make a marketing mistake and still live the next year. I mean, we all, every year there's somebody else, some major company who does some dumb thing, kind of a racist ad or something that can be misinterpreted. And I've got a few examples in my book. those big companies are still in business. Okay, it was an oopsie and, they move on. Maybe they fired this one person or 20 people in their marketing group, but they had 150. So nothing was lost, or nothing major was lost, other than, it impacted, they had to answer the analyst in a particular quarterly call. But if you're a startup and if you make a mistake like that, you're done. You had only $100,000 in marketing budget or $200,000 in marketing budget. And if that didn't do what it was supposed to do, you're done. So for a startup, marketing becomes even more important, even though it's a smaller piece, but it's more important. And one of the examples I gave you was that just because you're a startup, just because you have very few customers, does not mean that you are at a disadvantage when it comes to research. In fact, if Breeze did the research, or Procter & Gamble did the research the way a startup would have done. If they were doing research as a Procter & Gamble, that wasn't helping them at all. It's only when they started talking to customers, real customers, can you spend half an hour with you? Can I just talk to you? That's what a typical entrepreneur will do, right? Because almost beg their customer, hey, can I just spend some time and ask you some questions? That's what Procter & Gamble did. And that's how they discovered what they needed to discover. So yes, startups have a different set of challenges, but I would never think of startups as being challenged. In fact, they have certain advantages to them that the big corporations don't have.
We have time for one more question. Okay, so for those of you that are attending in person, Atul can stay for maybe 5-10 minutes, and feel free to enjoy the refreshments and talk to Atul. And for those that are attending online, thank you. We will make the presentation available if you send us an email, and we will email the presentation to you. And thank you for attending the first speaker for our fall-winter speaker series. Our next one will be probably the first or second week of November, and we will be sending out invite in a couple of weeks. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks, Grace. Thank you all.